Our modest three-bedroom house sat in the middle of Willow Creek Estates, a planned community that promised safety, amenities, and accessibility. Those promises were what drew me to this neighborhood 3 years ago when I was searching for the perfect home for my daughter Lily and me. Lily was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, commonly known as brittle bone disease, a condition that makes her bones extremely fragile and prone to fractures from even minor impacts. By age 7, she had already endured 17 fractures throughout her young life. The clean sidewalks, well-maintained community playground, and proximity to her specialized medical facility made this HOA-governed neighborhood seem like the perfect sanctuary for us. I gladly paid the monthly fees, believing they ensured the safety and accessibility that Lily desperately needed. The playground, visible from our kitchen window, quickly became her favorite place in the world. It was the one space where, with proper equipment and precautions, she could experience the simple joy of play that other children took for granted. Most of our neighbors embraced us from the beginning. The Johnsons next door learned how to properly help Lily in and out of their swimming pool during summer gatherings. Mrs. Rodriguez from across the street often baked gluten-free cookies, accommodating Lily's dietary restrictions that accompanied her condition. Even Mr. Peterson, known for being grumpy about most things, would clear our walkway of ice and snow before I even woke up during winter months, understanding that a slip could mean another hospital visit for Lily. The HOA board had previously been reasonable about accommodations for Lily. They approved the small ramp I installed at our front entrance and permitted the special cushioned swing equipment we used at the playground. The previous board president, a retired doctor named Allen, had even helped secure funding for additional rubberized surfacing beneath the playground equipment to create a safer play environment for all children, especially those with disabilities like Lily. But everything changed 3 months ago when Patricia Winters, whom everyone called Corinne behind her back, was elected as the new HOA president. She campaigned on a platform of community standards and rule enforcement that appealed to a minority of residents concerned about property values above all else. Her first board meeting announced a zero-tolerance policy for rule violations, with increased fines and more aggressive enforcement procedures. I remember the first time I noticed the change at the playground. Lily and I were heading for our evening play session when I spotted new laminated signs posted at the entrance. All external equipment prohibited. Violators will be fined, by order of the HOA board. My stomach tightened as I read the words, knowing that Lily's specialized swing supports fell into this nebulous category of external equipment. But I reassured myself that surely our medical exemption would still be honored. As Lily chatted excitedly about trying the slide that day, I noticed a stern-faced woman with perfectly styled blonde hair watching us from near the park entrance. She clutched a clipboard and wore a name badge that proclaimed her as Patricia Winters, HOA president. Her eyes narrowed as she observed Lily's specialized cushioned clothing and the adaptive equipment bag I carried. Something in her calculating gaze sent a chill through me despite the warm evening air. "Can we go play now, Mommy?" Lily tugged at my hand, oblivious to the woman's scrutiny. I forced a smile and nodded, trying to shake off my growing sense of unease. "Of course, sweetheart. Let us go have some fun." I had no idea that this moment marked the beginning of a nightmare that would ultimately lead to my daughter's broken arms, a community divided, and a power-hungry woman facing criminal charges for her actions. The playground, once our sanctuary, was about to become a battleground. The first confrontation with Corinne came just 2 days after the new playground rules appeared. I was helping Lily into her specialized swing when a shadow fell across us. Corinne Winters stood with her clipboard, a frown etched deeply into her otherwise Botox-smoothed face. Her designer sunglasses perched atop her highlighted hair as she looked down at us. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying across the playground. "I do not believe that equipment is authorized for use in our community playground." I continued securing the padded supports around Lily before responding. "We have a medical exemption. The previous board approved it because of my daughter's disability." Karen tapped her pen against her clipboard. "I am not seeing any record of an approved exemption in the official HOA documentation. All previous exceptions have been nullified under the new board guidelines unless officially renewed." Several other parents at the playground had gone. Quiet, watching our exchange. Lily looked up at me with confusion in her eyes, her excitement about playing already dimming. I took a deep breath, determined to remain calm for her sake. "My daughter has osteogenesis imperfecta. That means her bones break very easily. This equipment is medically necessary for her safety. We have been using it here for 3 years without issue," I explained, trying to keep my voice level. Karen glanced at Lily, who was now shrinking against me, sensing the tension. For a moment, I thought I saw something like understanding flicker across Karen's face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Rules exist for the safety of all children and to minimize liability for the association," she replied. "You will need to submit a formal exemption request with documentation from her physician. Until then, I must ask you to remove this unauthorized equipment." "We cannot use the playground without it," I said. "It would be dangerous for her." "Then I suggest you find alternate activities until your paperwork is processed. The next board meeting is in 3 weeks. With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, making notes on her clipboard. I noticed Mrs. Rodriguez watching from a nearby bench. She approached after Karen left. "That woman is on some kind of power trip," she whispered. "Last week she cited the Andersons for having their trash visible from the street for an extra hour." Over the next 2 weeks, Karen seemed to appear at the playground whenever Lily and I arrived. She never directly confronted us again but would stand at a distance, making notes and occasionally taking photos. Each time, she would review her clipboard and frown in our direction. The psychological warfare was effective. Lily began asking if we could go to the playground at different times, having picked up on the tension and scrutiny. I submitted the formal exemption request as instructed, complete with documentation from Lily's specialist at the Children's Hospital. I even included photos of the specialized equipment and a letter explaining how it worked to keep Lily safe while allowing her to experience normal childhood play. The process was humiliating, having to justify my child's basic right to safely use a community facility we paid fees to maintain. During this period, I noticed other changes in the neighborhood. The vibrant community bulletin board became a wall of violation notices. The community Facebook group filled with complaints about Karen's aggressive enforcement of obscure bylaws, citations for flower pots being the wrong shade of terracotta, warnings about grass being half an inch too tall, and fines for holiday decorations left up one day past the permitted period. A week before the scheduled board meeting, I encountered Karen at the playground again. This time, she approached with 2 laminated pages. "Your exemption request has been preliminarily denied," she stated without preamble. "The equipment presents a tripping hazard to other children and alters community property without proper permits." "That is ridiculous," I responded, feeling heat rise to my face. "This equipment does not alter anything. It is temporary and removable, and my daughter has a legally protected right to accommodation under the ADA." Karen's expression hardened. The HOA has legal counsel that disagrees with your interpretation. We cannot have residents modifying community property based on their personal needs. Rules apply to everyone. As she walked away, she called over her shoulder, "Consider this your official warning. Further violations will result in fines starting at $100 per incident." That evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked in a small voice, "Why does that lady not want me to play like the other kids?" I fought back tears as I kissed her forehead. Some people just do not understand that different people need different things sometimes. But do not worry, I am not going to let her stop you from playing. I made that promise without knowing how difficult keeping it would become, or the terrible price my daughter would pay for one woman's inflexible adherence to rules that were never designed to accommodate children like Lily. Saturday morning dawned with perfect spring weather, blue skies, gentle breezes, and temperatures warm enough for Lily to wear her lightweight protective gear rather than the bulkier winter padding. Her excitement was contagious as she ate her breakfast, chattering about which playground equipment she wanted to try today. Saturdays meant the playground would be bustling with families, which always made Lily feel less different when she was among many children playing. "Can I try the slide today if you help me?" she asked, her blue eyes hopeful behind her glasses. "We will see how you are feeling once we get there," I replied, carefully packing our playground bag with her specialized equipment. "Let us start with the swing, and then we can think about the slide." We arrived at the playground around 10 o'clock. Several families were already there, children running and laughing across the well-maintained play structures. I waved to Mrs. Rodriguez, who sat on a bench watching her grandchildren on the monkey bars. Mr. Peterson nodded to us as he pushed his grandson on a regular swing. The familiar sense of community temporarily eased my anxiety about potential confrontations with Karen. I selected a swing at the end of the row, our usual spot where we had enough space to set up Lily's adaptive equipment without blocking access for others. The specialized swing supports included padded side stabilizers that prevented dangerous sideways movements, and a custom harness system that distributed pressure evenly across Lily's body, minimizing the risk of fractures from sudden stops or jerky motions. "Arms up, sweetheart," I instructed as I carefully fitted the cushioned harness around her torso. Lily complied, her face already lighting up with anticipation. I checked each strap meticulously, testing the tension and ensuring everything was properly secured. Then I added the side stabilizers to the swing chains, creating a supportive cocoon that would allow Lily to experience the joy of swinging without the dangers that could break her fragile bones. "Ready for takeoff?" I asked, our traditional phrase that always made her giggle. "Ready for takeoff, Captain Mommy," she replied with a salute. I had just started pushing her gently, Lily's delighted laughs joining the playground symphony of joyful children, when a sharp voice cut through the air. "This needs to stop immediately." Karen Winters marched toward us, two men in polo shirts bearing HOA board member badges following behind her. She wore a fitted blazer despite the casual weekend setting, her clipboard still firmly in hand. Her face was flushed with what appeared to be righteous indignation. "I have given you ample warning about unauthorized equipment," she announced loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "This is a direct violation of Community Guidelines Section 7, Paragraph 3. Parents began to pause their activities, turning to watch the confrontation. I continued pushing Lily's swing gently, unwilling to cut short her precious playtime. "As I explained before, this is medically necessary equipment for my daughter's disability," I responded, keeping my voice calm despite my racing heart. "We have submitted all the required paperwork." Karen turned to the board members beside her. "As you can see, Gentlemen, this is exactly the situation I described. Unauthorized modifications to community property creating potential liability issues. The men looked uncomfortable, eyeing Lily's specialized equipment with uncertainty. The taller one cleared his throat. Perhaps we could discuss this after the child finishes playing. Absolutely not, Karen snapped. Rules must be enforced consistently. The equipment must be removed now. By this point, a small crowd had gathered. I saw Mrs. Rodriguez approaching, concern on her face. Several parents had taken out their phones, sensing the escalating tension. My daughter has brittle bone disease, I explained to the board members, ignoring Karen. This equipment prevents fractures. Taking it away while she is using it would create a serious safety risk. The safety of all children is precisely why we have these rules, Karen insisted. If we allow one exception, where does it end? One of the board members, a younger man with glasses, spoke up. I think the ADA might actually require us to. The HOA legal team has been very clear, Karen interrupted. Our rules are compliant when uniformly enforced. She stepped closer to the swing. This equipment is coming down now. Before I could react, Karen reached for the side stabilizer on the right chain of the swing. This is not properly installed equipment. It is a hazard. Stop, I shouted, lunging forward. You cannot remove that while my daughter is swinging. It happened in horrible slow motion. Karen yanked at the stabilizer, trying to detach it from the chain. The sudden movement disrupted the carefully balanced system. The swing jerked violently to one side. Lily, still harnessed but now destabilized, tilted sharply. The harness held her torso protected, but her arms flew outward reflexively to catch herself. I heard the crack before I saw it. Then another. Lily's scream pierced the air as both her arms bent at unnatural angles from the impact against the side stabilizer Karen had partially dislodged. The sound was one I had heard before, but never this severe, the unmistakable sound of breaking bones. Lily, I screamed, reaching her just as her small body went limp from shock. The playground erupted into chaos. Parents rushed forward, some to help, others to pull their children away from the disturbing scene. Mrs. Rodriguez was already on her phone calling 911. Mr. Peterson had moved with surprising speed for his age, to help support Lily's body weight, as I frantically tried to remove the harness without causing more damage. Do not move her arms, I instructed through tears. Please do not touch her arms. Karen stood frozen for a moment, her face pale. Then, astonishingly, she began to back away while saying, "She must have had the equipment installed incorrectly. The HOA cannot be held responsible for improper use of the playground." The taller board member grabbed Karen's arm. "Stop talking, Patricia. A child is seriously injured." Someone shouted, "I got it all on video. I saw everything." Lily's eyes fluttered, her face ghostly white. "Mommy," she whimpered, "it hurts so much." I cradled her head, being careful not to move her broken arms. "Help is coming, baby. Help is coming. Stay still for Mommy." My tears fell onto her face as sirens began to wail in the distance. In the midst of this nightmare, I was vaguely aware of several neighbors forming a protective circle around us, some openly filming Karen as she continued to mutter about regulations and liability. The playground had transformed from a place of joy to a scene of trauma, and the community that had embraced us was now bearing witness to the consequences of one woman's rigid enforcement of rules that should never have been applied to a disabled child. The emergency room buzzed with activity around us, but I existed in a bubble of silent horror, watching as doctors carefully examined Lily's broken arms. X-ray images displayed on light boxes revealed the devastating extent of the damage. Compound fractures in both forearms, with the right ulna having splintered into 3 distinct fragments. For a child with already fragile bones, these were catastrophic injuries that would require extensive surgery and a long, painful recovery. "We need to insert pins to stabilize the right arm," the orthopedic specialist explained gently. "The left will require casting but should heal without surgical intervention. Given her condition, we will need to be extremely careful with the anesthesia protocol." I nodded numbly, signing consent forms while never taking my eyes off Lily's small form. They had given her pain medication that made her drowsy but not completely unconscious. Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes despite the drugs. Each time she whimpered, another piece of my heart shattered. "Mommy is here," I whispered, carefully stroking her hair, the only part of her I could touch without causing more pain. "The doctors are going to fix your arms." "Why did that lady hurt me?" Lily asked, her voice small and confused. "Did I break a rule?" The innocent question broke something inside me. "No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong, nothing at all." A police officer arrived while Lily was being prepped for surgery. Officer Ramirez introduced herself quietly and asked if she could take a statement. "We have received multiple calls about an assault on a disabled minor," she explained, her kind eyes moving between me and Lily. In the small consultation room adjacent to the emergency department, I recounted everything. Our history in the neighborhood, Karen's escalating enforcement, the specialized equipment, and the horrifying moment when she forcibly removed a safety device while my daughter was using it. "Several witnesses have already provided video footage," Officer Ramirez noted, showing me her tablet where I could see a recording of the incident from a neighbor's perspective. The footage was even more damning than I had realized, clearly showing Karen ignoring multiple warnings and deliberately removing the stabilizer despite seeing Lily in the swing. "This is not a simple accident," the officer stated. "Based on witness statements and this video evidence, we are investigating this as potential assault and reckless endangerment of a disabled minor." By the time Lily emerged from surgery, my phone had exploded with messages from neighbors. Mrs. Rodriguez organized a meal train. The Johnsons offered to mow our lawn and take care of outdoor maintenance while we were focused on Lily's recovery. Even Mr. Peterson had left a gruff but heartfelt voicemail offering to drive us to follow-up medical appointments. Amid the outpouring of support, one message stood out, from a blocked number. "This unfortunate incident has been greatly exaggerated. There are 2 sides to every story, and I expect you will be hearing from HOA legal representation soon. Obviously, I never intended for anyone to get hurt, but using non-standard equipment always carried risks that you chose to accept." I showed the message to Officer Ramirez, who added it to her report. "Attempting to shift blame to the victim," she noted with a frown. "Not a good sign of remorse." As evening fell, neighbors began arriving at the hospital. They brought stuffed animals for Lily, coffee for me, and most importantly, evidence. Mr. Anderson had compiled videos from 3 different angles showing the entire incident. Mrs. Rodriguez brought screenshots of previously submitted complaints against Karen for discriminatory enforcement of HOA rules. "She has been targeting families with children for months," Mrs. Rodriguez explained, "issuing violation notices whenever kids leave toys in yards, restricting playground hours, and fining families for noise complaints during reasonable daylight hours." Sarah Kent, a quiet woman who rarely spoke at community gatherings, revealed that her son with autism had been banned from the community pool after Karen claimed his stimming behaviors were disruptive to other residents. I did not fight it because I was afraid of making things worse, Sarah admitted, tears in her eyes. But seeing what happened to Lily made me realize my silence enabled her to keep hurting vulnerable children. By midnight, the hospital room looked like a command center for a community uprising. Cards and drawings from neighborhood children covered the walls. A spreadsheet detailed 27 separate incidents of Karen's discriminatory actions against families with children or disabilities. The evidence painted a picture not of an overzealous rule enforcer, but of someone who systematically targeted the most vulnerable residents of our community. As Lily finally slept, her tiny arms encased in casts and bandages, I scrolled through the documentation our neighbors had compiled. Karen had built a paper fortress of rules and regulations, but she had underestimated the strength of a community united against injustice. Looking at my daughter's tear-stained face, I made a silent promise. This would be the last time Karen Winters used her power to hurt a child. The realization crystallized within me. Sometimes fighting back was not about revenge, but about protection, about ensuring that what happened to Lily would never happen to another child. Outside in the hallway, I heard Officer Ramirez speaking with hospital security about maintaining privacy and safety protocols. "We have reason to believe," she said in a low voice, "that this case will be escalated to criminal charges once the district attorney reviews the evidence." 3 days after the incident, with Lily still recovering in the hospital, I received a call from Elena Vasquez, a disability rights attorney who had heard about our case through a mutual connection at the hospital. "I would like to meet with you," she said. "What happened to your daughter represents multiple violations of federal disability law, and I believe you have grounds for both civil and criminal cases." The following morning, while Lily's grandmother stayed with her at the hospital, I sat in Elena's office surrounded by framed legislation and court decisions related to disability accommodations. Photographs of smiling families lined one wall, previous clients, I assumed, whose lives she had helped improve. "Let me be clear about what happened from a legal perspective," Elena said after I shared our story and showed her the video evidence. "The Americans with Disabilities Act requires reasonable accommodations for disabled individuals in public spaces, including HOA common areas. Your daughter's adaptive equipment constitutes a reasonable accommodation for her medical condition." She laid out 3 documents side by side. "This is the Fair Housing Act, this is the ADA, and this is your HOA's own bylaws which explicitly state they will comply with all federal disability laws." Her finger tapped each paper emphatically. "Karen Winters violated all 3 when she denied your accommodation request and then physically removed safety equipment from a disabled child." "But she claims she was just enforcing HOA rules," I said. Elena shook her head firmly. "Federal law supersedes HOA regulations. Always. And more importantly, even if she genuinely believed she was enforcing valid rules, physically removing safety equipment from a child is reckless endangerment at minimum, and given the prior warnings about your daughter's condition, potentially rises to the level of knowing assault." She pulled out a legal pad. "Here is what we are going to do. First, I am taking your case pro bono. Second, we are filing an ADA complaint with the Department of Justice. Third, we are cooperating fully with the police investigation which I expect will lead to criminal charges. Fourth, we will pursue civil damages against both Karen personally and potentially the HOA if they fail to take appropriate action." While Lily and I focused on her medical recovery, the legal machinery Elena set in motion moved with surprising speed. Detective Morgan from the Special Victims Unit joined Officer Ramirez in interviewing witnesses. Their investigation expanded beyond the playground incident as more neighbors came forward with accounts of Karen's targeted harassment. The HOA board called an emergency meeting 1 week after the incident. I did not attend, focusing instead on helping Lily adjust to her casts and managing her pain medication. But videos and summaries flooded the community message board afterward. The normally stoic board members appeared visibly shaken as they reviewed evidence of Karen's actions. "We have discovered numerous complaints that were never presented to the full board," the vice president announced. "Ms. Winters appears to have unilaterally dismissed or hidden these complaints from official records." Karen's chair remained conspicuously empty throughout the meeting. According to neighbors, she had not been seen in the community since the incident, though her Mercedes remained parked in her driveway. 2 weeks after Lily's arms were broken, Elena called with news. "The district attorney has reviewed the case and is filing criminal charges against Karen Winters. Reckless endangerment of a child, assault causing bodily injury to a disabled person, and violation of civil rights under color of authority." "What does that last one mean?" I asked. "It means she used her position of power with the HOA to violate your daughter's civil rights," Elena explained. "It is a serious charge that recognizes she was not acting just as an individual but abusing her official position." The next day, local news vans appeared in the neighborhood as Karen was served with formal charges. Reporters contacted me for statements, but I declined interviews, focusing instead on Lily's first physical therapy appointment. Her right arm, held together with surgical pins, would require months of rehabilitation. The therapist warned us that she might never regain full range of motion in that wrist. As we left the medical center, my phone buzzed with a message from Elena. "Check your email. You need to see what we just received in Discovery." The email contained dozens of documents, internal HOA communications that Karen had been forced to turn over to investigators. Among them was an email thread from 2 months earlier, where Karen had specifically identified Lily's equipment as a priority violation, despite being explicitly informed of its medical necessity. Most damning was an email Karen had sent to a private HOA management company consultant. "Need advice on removing undesirable elements from community spaces. Particularly concerned about equipment for disabled child creating negative aesthetic and liability issues. How can we legally deny accommodation requests while maintaining compliance paperwork?" The consultant had replied with a warning. "You cannot deny reasonable accommodations for documented disabilities. Doing so would violate federal law and expose the HOA to significant liability. I strongly advise against any actions that could be construed as discrimination." Karen had ignored this professional advice, pursuing her agenda despite knowing it violated the law. The documentary evidence transformed her from an overzealous rule enforcer to something far more deliberate and malicious. That evening, as I helped Lily carefully change into pajamas designed to accommodate her casts, she asked, "Is the mean lady going to hurt other kids too?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, she is not in charge of the playground anymore, and she is going to have to answer for what she did to you." "Good," Lily said with the simple justice of childhood. "Nobody should break kids' arms." The legal process was just beginning, but the community had already rendered its verdict. Karen Winters had used rules as weapons against the vulnerable, and now the very system of laws she had hidden behind was turning against her. For the first time since the incident, I felt something beyond anger and grief, a quiet certainty that justice was indeed in motion. 3 weeks after the incident, Karen Winters finally broke her silence with a carefully orchestrated press conference on her manicured front lawn. Standing beside a silver-haired attorney in an expensive suit, she presented herself as a dedicated community volunteer who had experienced an unfortunate misunderstanding. As HOA president, my only concern has always been the safety and property values of our community, she stated, reading from prepared remarks. The incident at the playground was a tragic accident that occurred while I was performing my duties to ensure playground equipment met safety standards. Her attorney added, "My client was enforcing duly adopted community guidelines when an improperly secured piece of unauthorized equipment failed. Ms. Winters deeply regrets the child's injuries, but denies any wrongdoing or discriminatory intent." I watched the press conference on my tablet while sitting beside Lily's bed as she napped, her casts decorated with colorful signatures from classmates who had visited earlier. The brazen attempt to rewrite history made my blood boil, but I remembered Elena's advice. Let her talk. Every public statement digs her hole deeper when contradicted by evidence. Elena's predictio N proved correct the very next day when local news outlets received copies of emails Karen had sent to board members before the incident. In one particularly damning message, she had written, "We need to make examples of residents who think they can ignore the rules. The situation with the disabled child at the playground is the perfect opportunity to reassert board authority." The reporter who broke the story interviewed 3 former board members who confirmed that Karen had specifically targeted families with children for enforcement actions, claiming they reduced property values and created liability issues. The emails revealed a pattern of deliberate harassment disguised as rule enforcement. 5 days after her press conference, the HOA board held another emergency meeting. This time, the community center was packed with residents demanding action. I attended with my mother, who had been helping care for Lily during her recovery. The vice president opened the meeting with a formal statement. After reviewing extensive evidence and consulting with legal counsel, the board has unanimously voted to remove Patricia Winters from her position as president, effective immediately. The room erupted in applause. Board members looked visibly relieved as they proceeded to present their findings. Dozens of complaints that Karen had buried, evidence of selective enforcement targeting families and disabled residents, and documentation showing she had been officially warned about potential ADA violations months before the incident with Lily. "We offer our deepest apologies to the affected families, particularly to Lily and her mother," the vice president continued. "The board has approved immediate funding for fully accessible playground equipment and will be reviewing all denied accommodation requests from the past year." As the community mobilized around positive change, Karen retreated further. Neighbors reported unusual activity at her house, documents being carried out in boxes, late-night visitors who appeared to be accountants or attorneys. The criminal case against her continued to build as the police investigation uncovered more evidence of targeted harassment. 6 weeks after the incident, with Lily's left cast removed but her right arm still immobilized by pins and bandages, I received a call from Elena. "Karen's attorney has reached out. They want to meet." The following day, in Elena's office, Karen's attorney presented a settlement offer. The number was substantial, enough to cover all of Lily's medical expenses, future therapies, and still leave a significant sum for her education. "In exchange," the attorney explained, "we ask for a confidential settlement agreement and for you to support dropping the criminal charges." I looked at the paper, then at Elena, who remained stone-faced. The amount was tempting. It would secure Lily's future and end this painful chapter in our lives. "What happens if I refuse?" I asked. "Then we prepare for trial. My client maintains her innocence and believes a jury will understand she was acting within her authority as HOA president." I thought about Lily's question from weeks earlier. Is the mean lady going to hurt other kids too? The settlement would help my daughter, but it would also allow Karen to escape real accountability. It would send a message that wealth could shield someone from the consequences of harming a disabled child. "No," I said firmly, pushing the offer back across the table. "I will not accept hushing this up with money. Your client broke my daughter's arms after being explicitly warned about her disability. She needs to face the consequences of her actions." Karen's attorney collected the papers with a tight smile. "We suspected that might be your position. We will see you in court." Alina nodded approvingly as they left. "You made the right choice. This was never just about Lily. It is about every vulnerable person who faces discrimination disguised as rule enforcement." That evening, as I helped Lily with her physical therapy exercises, I felt a strange sense of peace despite the challenges ahead. Some forms of accountability could not be purchased. Some injuries could not be erased with a check. And some principles were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The courtroom fell silent as Karen Winters stood before the judge, her designer suit unable to mask how diminished she appeared compared to the imperious figure who had terrorized our community. Gone was the clipboard, the imperious posture, the unwavering certainty of her authority. After months of legal maneuvering, facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of a public trial where multiple families would testify about her systematic harassment, she had accepted a plea deal. "The defendant has agreed to plead guilty to reckless endangerment of a disabled minor and violation of civil rights," the prosecutor announced. "In exchange for this plea, the state has agreed to drop the more serious assault charges." Judge Martinez looked directly at Karen. "Do you understand that by entering this plea, you are admitting guilt to these serious charges?" "Yes, Your Honor," Karen replied, her voice barely audible. The judge continued, "I have reviewed the plea agreement and find the terms appropriate given the circumstances. The defendant will serve no jail time but will be placed on probation for 3 years, complete 500 hours of community service at organizations serving disabled children, undergo mandatory training on disability rights laws, and pay restitution to the victim." As part of the sentencing, Karen was required to listen as I read a victim impact statement. I approached the podium, my hands trembling slightly as I unfolded my prepared remarks. "My daughter Lily is 8 years old. Before the defendant broke her arms, Lily had experienced 17 fractures in her lifetime due to her brittle bone disease. Each one was painful, each one set back her development, but each one healed. The injuries the defendant caused were different. The surgeon who repaired her right arm told us she will likely never regain full mobility in that wrist. Simple childhood activities like drawing, playing catch, or even braiding her own hair have become permanent challenges.